Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last episode of Two Wizards and a Mic for the year of 2024. And of course, if you know anything about the show, we're just a couple of old dudes who like to talk about D&D, and we kind of like to have fun at the table, and we want to help you in just very small ways to have a better experience. But I'm Shane.
And I am Andrew with my oat nog. I don't have
oat
dairy.
nog.
So yes, it's oat nog.
Nice. I actually drank all my eggnog, which is kind of it's only something you can drink at during the holidays because it gets you over the hump of the texture. Sometimes people just hate that, and sometimes I can't stand it. Sometimes I'm like, oh, so then I put bourbon in it, or I put in some Baileys, and then it gets better.
I actually just asked. I was in the kitchen getting this, and I'm like, what is in that anyway? I just know it doesn't have dairy. And I just read the ingredients for the first time, even though I've been drinking it for 2 or 3 years or something. At Christmas,
what?
Not all year long.
What's this arsenic that's in here?
And I noticed my wife has hidden it way to the back of the fridge behind the eggnog. She doesn't want to go near this stuff. So, yeah.
Well, hey,
coconut, which
sorry, what?
Coconut eggnog, which has no dairy again. I'll have to look into that. Coconut.
Why does that just sound absolutely disgusting? I don't know.
They're better than you think. I mean, come on, look at that.
I mean, hey, well, with a lot of processing and all kinds of stuff, it's possible, I guess.
Sure.
And what are we talking about? We're talking about today because we wanted to have a little fun.
Yeah.
And,
even more than normal.
Even more than normal. We're going to be talking about movies that could be made into adventures at the table. So, do you want to start with yours? Because you and I, we were talking about, we were sharing some. So
sure, yeah.
So you start. I'll tell you if it's on my list.
Right. We'll break it up by genre, just in general, and of course, some movies sort of transcend that, getting a label on it. But in general, we'll talk about the genres, and then we'll just alternate, Shane and I, and we'll probably have several movies on both of our lists. So the first.
Well, let's get the obvious ones out of the way.
Yeah, I think we should maybe I'll list the really obvious ones, and we'll.
Okay.
So with fantasy, of course, we have the Lord of the Rings and the Peter Jackson movies. Now, those are just straight up. You can just use that story or elements of it, and there's, you've got tons and tons of inspiration there. And then there's. Obviously as well, Narnia, the Narnia movies would be things that you could do. You could change it a bit because that involved kids and teens, but you could, for the most part, you could change that. Other fantasy ones that are quite popular, Excalibur, Conan, and Princess Bride, because a lot of D&D games, a lot of groups, there's actually quite a bit of humor in their D&D games. And Princess Bride is perfect for that. So there's a lot of inspiration there. There's a story you could follow. You could use elements from these movies as well. And then Labyrinth, Jim Henson, that movie too, you could change it, make it a bit more a little more hardcore than just a kid looking for her brother. But it has a lot of interesting elements.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So I think those are a lot of the really obvious ones. Then maybe you want to add some more fantasy ones as well.
Well, I was telling Andrew beforehand that of course we have a bunch of different ones, but or a bunch of the same ones. But one of the ones actually I'll bring up is Willow. And it's basically an infant that's been prophesized to basically destroy the evil villain, and a bunch of people get together that are from all walks of life, essentially, to stop this from happening. Because, you the thing I liked about that particular, as ridiculous as the film is, it's it has it checks all the boxes for fantasy. It has weird creatures that they encounter randomly. It has all of those kinds of things that are going on. That just it's like a D&D module written for screen. And I'm just gonna do a shout out for Labyrinth as well, because the one scene or the one moment in that film that always stuck with me, aside from everything being awesome, was the oubliette. Remember when they get trapped briefly in that underground room where the characters can't escape for a little while, and I just thought, I always think of that as being like the ultimate trap, a trap that doesn't take much to get out of, but if you've never experienced being trapped in like a dungeon like that, then forget it. You could stay there for the entire adventure, really.
Yeah. Is that the part when, because the part I never forget is the Goblin King walking along the path and then walking upside down underneath.
Oh yeah. That's another great scene
Sort
in
of,
that film.
is there an artist who used to do, yeah, was it Escher? Wasn't it Escher who did those drawings?
MC Escher, yeah.
Yeah, with the stairs that are, yeah, so upside down stairs and so walking upside down and walking sideways, that for me is
That would be
I'll
cool.
never forget it. I remember actually seeing the trailer in the 80s, and they have that in the trailer and just going, "Oh my God, like this."
Well, there's also there's the dungeon cleaners, where they're in that, they're basically in a sewer, and then the Goblin King's like, "Well, hey guys, I'm out, but hey, deal with these dudes," and it's this big spinning thing with spikes and claws and whatnot, and then they desperately run away from it, and it turns out to be just like two very small like guys who kind of just pushing this machine along, which I loved. Because I could imagine like them somehow defeating this machine and then having to go, "All right, you guys, you're dead." They're like, we just work here." Like, I always think that's funny.
Right.
But what other stuff do I have this fantasy on my list here?
I should mention too from Labyrinth that we have two creatures we've made that were inspired by the Goblin King. One in Phaland, one in Phaland 2, and we have a creature / character inspired by Sarah in Monsters of Phaland 2 as well. So yeah, that book is for our inspiration artistically. Plus, we have a Bowie creature in every single book.
I was just going to bring up the Bowie creature.
Yeah,
that's awesome. The other one I have on my list that I group under fantasy is Pirates of the Caribbean, the first film, because it's a fairly straightforward thing. You've got characters that are cursed or have cursed items or are trying to complete some kind of quest, and then of course you have encounters. If you add in the other films, you have things like, I think the Kraken shows up in one film, stuff like that. So you have all these the undead pirates, exactly. Yeah. So you've got all of these things that are like, yeah, I could use that. I could use that. I could use that. Like, the 80s were ripe with these kinds of films, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, not that, Pirates of the Caribbean was, 2000s, but still, the film Legend as well. I don't know if you had that on your list, which was completely fantasy. I think it was one of Tom Cruise's first movies.
Yeah.
Where basically, I think if I remember correctly, the entire plot is based around that the world is the evil villain is trying to like take over the universe, but of course this unicorn creature can somehow save everyone. And stuff like that. So, and there's a lot of spells and things like that in that film. So I don't.
Yeah,
it's been a long time since I've seen it.
Right, and the woman from Ferris Bueller. It's one of the, because a lot of people were like, "What other movies is she in?" Because she was so good in Ferris Bueller, and that's one of the few movies she did. Yeah, I also have Time Bandits again around that same time,
Oh, I hadn't
and
thought of Time Bandits. Oh, that's
yeah,
brilliant.
and I love that. That again has that kind of humor quality that usually ends up coming into many D&D games. So I think that one has a lot of interesting inspiration, especially the idea of like sessions and episodes in your like adventures in your campaign, because that has
Right.
a lot of different parts to it and different settings, and also the traveling component of it. Obviously, the time, the time. Not a lot of D&D has time travel. I personally like it. I've only done it once. Um, we do have a chronomancer now in the Monsters of the Dungeon book, but I think Time
Nice.
Bandits is another really good one. Highlander too. Um,
Highlander, any of those sorts of films would be great. Although the is the second one better than the first? I'm trying to remember. It's been such
no,
a long time for
no,
those
no,
ones.
no,
No,
no.
definitely
I
not.
think there's a joke. I think I just saw a meme the other day about a father telling his son about Highlander, and his son said, "Is this the only one?" And his father goes, "Yep, yeah, this is the only one." Um, Another one, the last one from my second last one from my fantasy list is Dragonslayer, another 80s movie. Um,
Wow. Oh, that's going back. That's like
yeah,
82 or so.
I think that's Dennis Quaid as opposed to Randy. Randy would have been a whole other movie.
Yep. It's yeah. Yeah, it's
This
Dennis
drunken
Quaid.
guy wandering around the wilderness looking for dragons, as opposed to like this, feared warrior Dennis Quaid. Um, so I think Dragon Slayer, obvious inspirations there for hunting dragons or potentially having good dragons. And again, the idea of the chosen one, which is often part of
Yep.
D&D. And my last fantasy movie is the Van Helsing, the newer one with Hugh Jackman, Kate Beckinsale.
Which I have never seen.
Oh, I
I
think it's underrated. Oh, you know what? That reminds me of one other. Um, Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters, with what's his name, Jeremy Renner,
Oh, really?
and yeah, it is bizarre, and I love it. It's weird. It's almost like a B movie with A movie money and like sort of production, but the idea is sort of very B movie and very fun and very bizarre. Like their version of a witch is very strange. Like they're very good at hand to hand combat. They move at tremendous speeds. Um, yeah, it's. I think it's pretty cool. I think those two are underrated. Van Helsing and Hansel and Gretel. Yeah,
Two films that I have yet to see. I'll check them out.
yeah. Well, we should put. Maybe I'll just put the list down below. Um,
Oh, you
of
totally should.
all of these movies.
Totally should.
All right. So let's
Um,
move to. Do you have any more fantasy ones or?
a couple of I've got like as I think I mentioned to you before the show, The Mummy,
Oh yeah,
um, and the film Stardust, which I sort of equate as being like fantasy. It's got like
yeah,
airships and all
for
fancy stuff,
sure.
but they definitely don't. I mean, The Mummy, I guess, but it's more of an Indiana Jones-ish kind of flavor,
Yeah,
but
I have it
still
in
would
my
make a great
adventures.
adventure.
Yeah, I have it in my adventures movies. That is actually one of my favorite series. I think it's kind of like those 40s and or more like 50s, I guess. Those 50s like serials that Star Wars and Indiana Jones is based on. I
Yeah,
think it's so
exactly.
much fun. Um, Great D&D story. A lot of dungeon. You could have a lot of dungeon encounters. I love the group of people who are protecting the temples. So
Right.
actually, they inspired an NPC in the new book, in the Monsters of Dungeon book. We have someone there
Oh, cool.
who was inspired by that group. And then of course the hero is sort of an Indiana Jones type as well, quite similar.
Yeah, if not identical in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So well, I guess he's young. He's sort of the same age when they start. So let's look at adventures. So I mentioned Indiana Jones.
Mhm.
You've actually done that. You've had a character who was searching for artifacts before.
That's right. I was a halfling archaeologist who was trying to put everything into a museum, uh, which is actually quite difficult in an adventure when you're in a party of other people who are like, yeah, I think that we should really, we should keep that gold, you know. Well, but wait, what about the valuable thing you found? We should put that in a museum. But yeah,
Another one, which is sort of a combination of, I'd say, adventure and sci-fi, is The Thing. Well, and would be considered a horror movie too.
damn it, that's on my list. Oh wow.
The Thing is spectacular. I think it'd probably be in my top 10 of movies. I just love the way the story's told. Obviously, this episode we're going to have spoilers because we're talking about the plots of these movies. So you have this creature who infiltrates the area. Perfect D&D story. We have a creature inspired by this in the Wilderness book, and it's an incredibly powerful creature, which is what happens in the movie. So I think The Thing, something that can hide almost basically in plain sight and polymorph into other creatures, shape change. I love it.
No, it's really really cool because it's such a paranoid kind of thing. For my first non fantasy adventure, I chose Jaws.
Oh yeah,
because it would be it fits so well. It's like town being terrorized. They hire some people to take care of the problem, and you could have any kind of, well, I mean, if you played that in the world of Mir, you'd have a lot of sea creatures to choose from because they're always dangerous and deadly. I mean, I like the idea of adventures where characters have to prepare for the big bad because I've read a lot of adventures where it's basically they show up, they encounter some characters, they're given the quest, and then off they go to defeat the creature or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And in this case, from the perspective of World of Mir, just because, hey, we're here, you've always said people don't travel in the open ocean that often because there's a bunch of stuff out there that wants to eat them, the ship and all. So yeah, I mean, that would totally work in that sort of setting because, change, if not from don't make it a shark, make it, make it the Kraken. What the hell? Why not? Yeah. Or some sort of large sea creature, right? So, yeah.
A dragon or a beholder. There's tons of things you could use in D&D. Another adventure, one of my favorites, Inception.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
So again, time travel. I'd like the idea too of a party stealthing into enemy territory and then having to convince the enemy and different factions that they are, that they're somebody else, that maybe they're pretending to be a delegation of diplomats visiting the king, or they're pretending to be a merchant coming into the city. So that movie is fantastic. And I think it's a good movie to watch in terms of how to amp up the action, how to make things more and more challenging.
I like that idea.
Another one would be from adventures, the James Bond movies.
Oh, I hadn't actually considered James Bond at all. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense totally because it is every single film. It's a clear start to finish kind of, it's almost a procedural. It's like every single thing is like, oh, replace this villain with this, and instead of blowing up the island of whatever, we're gonna now nuke the other town or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you're on a quest to stop an evil villain, to eliminate them usually. The cool thing too is they change settings quite a bit. Usually have I'd say 3 to 5 settings at least in every movie, which is similar to a D&D session or campaign. I think it has a lot of cool elements, really diabolical villains, ridiculous kind of silly villains as well. So yeah, and then in the same vein, the Mission Impossible movies as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The film that I think works very well, and then I'm actually cheating here because I did actually run a campaign that did this a long time ago, but is Die Hard.
Oh yeah.
Where I replaced Nakatomi Tower with a wizard's tower, and basically the whole idea was, there were hostages, the party has to save them,
Right.
and they have to go basically up and up and up until they get to the top to save them. And yeah, I felt like it works very well just because you've got different environments, tight spaces. You have all of these kinds of elements that kind of work. And honestly, everyone gets to be, John McClane, really, when it comes down to it. Because,
exactly. In D&D, basically, you're right. Everybody in the game, if you want, you can all be John McClane. I love that one. That's on my list, and I'm going to be controversial here because I know that you actually think that it's a Christmas movie, and I think it would be a great idea to run it as a one-shot, even though I'm not really a fan of one-shots usually, but even though I ran one the day after my wedding on the island where we were getting married, because my best friends at the wedding said, please run us a D&D game.
Nice.
So I've only ran a one-shot, I think only twice ever. But it would be cool to do one around Christmas, even though personally, I don't think it's technically a Christmas movie. It just happens at Christmas.
I will fight you to the death. Well, actually, here's a weird one that I thought actually works really well is the film Apocalypse Now.
Oh, I didn't have that.
Because, again, it's characters, like a party has to go into like hostile territory.
Yeah.
They're being, paid to basically take down this rogue military leader kind of thing. Yeah. And actually, I wrote down, would work great if it were an anti-paladin. So, like, because don't you have, like, a sort of, I'm trying to remember which book it came from, but there's, like, a paladin that's kind of like the reverse.
Yeah, and, in the City book. Yeah, he's insane. So it would be having an insane anti-paladin, that would be
as like the big villain to, like, you have to just get in and defeat him or capture him or whatever.
You could have the jungle setting again as well. You could do that.
Well, exactly. You could totally do that.
Yeah. All right, another adventure one, King Kong, and I am a.
Oh yeah, that would work. That's not on my list.
King Kong movie. It's on your list, but my favorites are the 1970s one. I believe Kurt Russell. Is it Kurt Russell's in that?
I think that was 78. I want to say 77, somewhere there, late 70s anyway.
Yeah, I really like that one. But I love Peter Jackson's too, with
which I've never seen.
A whole bunch of good actors in that. But anyway, and the effects are spectacular. But you could that's just a straight up D&D adventure the way it is. You don't have to change anything.
Oh, totally.
But in general, going to some mysterious island that appears and disappears and has strange creatures on it. Perfect for D&D.
Another weird one is actually a series of films, but the Ocean's movies.
Oh.
Where they're all it's basically heist film after heist film after heist film. And I thought any one of those movies would actually work really, really well. Because you have a party of different people that are assigned different tasks. They have to do these tasks at certain times because they're working together to accomplish whatever the goal is. And but yeah, I just thought any of those films would be good.
Yeah, that's a good one. Master and Commander, if you want another.
Damn, that's on my list.
Oh, really? Or Mutiny on the Bounty. I kind of think those are
Mutiny on the Bounty
have similar kind of qualities. Both of those, if you want to do some sort of sea adventure. Gladiator is another one.
I have The Great Escape from 1963. I thought that was it popped into my mind a couple days ago, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
yeah,
definitely
that's a
one.
really good one.
I also have the A Quiet Place.
Oh,
Those ones with what's her name and what's his name,
oh,
but
the couple.
yeah,
Uh,
and
John
everyone has to be
Krasinski and
quiet, and
Emily
the
Blunt.
creatures are sorry, yeah, Emily Blunt and
Oh, don't tell me then, because I've actually never watched it.
oh well, actually, I'm not spoiling it, but essentially, because right at scene number one
Right.
is that everyone has to be quiet because the creatures can
Yeah.
hear them.
Yeah. I heard.
So
I heard about that.
so,
Um,
but yeah, I mean, it's all about stealth in that one because that would just be. Could you? I mean, the moment somebody fails a roll
yeah.
for stealth, I mean, suddenly you're gonna have to come up with ways where how do these characters survive a creature they can't necessarily kill easily.
Right.
So it would be kind of interesting to have them do that.
A stranger one, because I always like some of the more eccentric things. Is Big Trouble in Little China.
I mean yeah, that's not on my list, but that definitely would be
Yeah, yeah,
obvious.
like
Yeah.
a strange, like immortal spellcaster. You've got this quest um, going underneath, like underneath the city, like a sort of a dungeon adventure. Um, these strange henchmen with different powers, like almost like elemental and magical powers.
Yep.
And again, the humor element, which personally I like to have some of that in the D&D game. Of course, it can get carried away, but I like an element of that. Another adventure one. Okay, this is off the yeah, this is not one you might think of. Is North by Northwest. So
I not on my list, but yes, that would totally work. That would totally
yeah,
work.
it's a very famous movie, considered one of the top, greatest movies there is, probably top 10, top 20 movies. But you
You
again
know
have a
what?
quest. You have the idea of spies and who is a spy and who's not a spy, getting mistaken for being somebody else. That would be a cool element in a campaign. Like what if the campaign starts out and the heroes are arrested because they match the description of someone who's committed a crime and they're thrown in jail. And then they could be released and they found out that it wasn't them, but now they have to go and get, catch who. Maybe the king is like, we'll let you go, but you have to go find out who actually did it. Or
Well,
another element would be, what if they were framed by the people who did it?
this is exactly on my list. The film, The Fugitive,
Oh yeah,
with
yeah,
Harrison Ford. Same sort of thing.
yeah,
Somebody, a character of the party, is framed for a crime they didn't commit. They have to either seek out or they have to avoid, and they have to basically uh, expose the villain for having, this is the person who did this thing to us. Like that totally works with what you're suggesting for your film because, but the elements are the same. Like the story is practically the same, just told in a different way.
exactly, yeah.
I also chose out of left field. I chose the Revenant.
Oh
I
yeah,
thought that was a good one. That's very much a person against a party against the wilderness. They have to seek revenge against somebody who betrayed them. There's all kinds of things like natural, like every creature in the entire D&D lexicon could be used because
yeah,
you run into spirits, you run into deadly bears or it could be but at the end of the day you're trying to track down the ultimate villain. So um I also, and right after that one, by the way, on my list is The Ghost and the Darkness, which I kind of felt was sort of very similar story structure. But The Ghost and the Darkness is about um, characters who are hired to destroy a creature or several creatures in this particular film that are plaguing the villagers essentially. Um,
yeah. That
but I
one
want to know.
who's in that movie?
That's Michael Douglas. It's
Okay,
from, and there's a couple other famous people in it, but it's basically, uh, spoilers, lions are plaguing a village in Africa, and it takes place actually. I want to say it takes place in the 1800s. I can't remember exactly the time period, but essentially, characters are there to defend against the invasion of different creatures.
Okay.
And another weird one, which I hope I'm assuming this is not on your list. No Country for Old Men.
No. I've
So,
never seen it.
oh gosh, oh man.
No.
Basically, the film is. I'm just looking at my notes here.
Don't give it too much.
I'm trying to tell you how it is, but
we both know
there are.
We both have to watch this holiday, so.
Yes, I do. I
told you have to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's right. But essentially, yeah, the same sort of elements are there for a lot of films. But basically, characters stumble across a cache of valuables, and they have to avoid getting caught by the people who want it back, essentially. And this is my last film on this I created a list called The Weird List. Actually, no, it's not the last. There's a couple others. But this is the one I thought would be really cool because I've always wanted to try a character that was an artificer that could actually make stuff. But I've never been able to really figure out how do you play that so it kind of is not just somebody creating, I don't know, little tiny robots or something, but is the Hurt Locker.
Oh,
The Hurt Locker is about bomb disposal people, and I was like, would it be cool if they were hired to, I don't know, find something, but they have all these explosive sort of devices or traps or whatever they are, and they have to either avoid them or defuse them or that kind of stuff. But essentially, to me, a lot of these movies that I picked are basically places where players would have to play together. That they wouldn't be that if they didn't work together, bad stuff could happen. Like I thought of another. Sorry, I'm totally blabbering, but the other film was The Rock. That Sean Connery one where they're like on Alcatraz Island.
Yeah.
I thought that because that would actually be kind of a split party kind of adventure where some of them are like the people trying to save the place, some of them are trying to survive. Some of the villain. Like it just has all of the elements for adventures like out of the yin yang. But the Hurt Locker is definitely one of those weird ones where I just happened to be reading about it yesterday and I thought, actually, wait a minute, that film would actually work as like a because it's a fairly straightforward adventure. Hey, you go do this thing. All right, cool. I'll go do that thing. It's very dangerous, that thing. But oh wait, partway through, you're like, wait a minute, there's something else going on here, and I thought that would be kind of a cool twist for that one.
Definitely. All right, let's move to sci-fi. So,
okay.
Very obvious one, which a lot of people have in their games, is Star Wars. So you have the Dark Lord, you've got like the Knight, and the Jedi could be like the wizards. There's tons and tons that you could mine there. The sidekicks, like the rogue, Han Solo, the rogue character. You've got the princess who's not a damsel in distress. I think, and the emperor, sort of like maybe a sorcerer or some, really high, powerful sorcerer or a lich even.
Yep.
So there's Star Wars, and Star Trek would be different. Star Wars would be sort of more the combat focus, where Star Trek would be more the role play and exploration. But I think both of those two are very common for D&D inspiration. And another common one, which I love, is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
So to me, the games at our table are sort of a combination of Lord of the Rings and Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, Guardians of the Galaxy would be on my list had I thought of that film or those films. I also have things like now this is actually something that I've always wanted to do, but there's a 1979 film. There's actually a couple of them, come to think of it, where the film I'm thinking about, by the way, is The Black Hole, that
Oh,
from
yeah,
Disney back in the day,
yeah.
where you have a bunch of characters are traveling through the universe. They stumble across a ship that's been lost forever, and there's a black hole, and a bunch of stuff has gone on the ship, and it's kind of this big sort of mystery that eventually, they have to, uh, save the day at the end. Um, Another one is what was the other one? Blade Runner, of course. That's what I wrote down. That was the first on my sci-fi list. Where Blade Runner, again, straightforward adventure, characters that are trying to survive, and players could choose to help or not.
I was thinking
Um,
about that. You could make it as like knights hunting down a construct, or
yep.
even knights hunting down like a doppelganger. You could change form, um, and you didn't know which were the doppelgangers and which were the humans. Yeah, Blade Runner is amazing. I also did the Matrix.
Oh, I didn't think of the Matrix. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh yeah.
So
Why did that never occurred to me actually?
yeah, it's sort of like a sci-fi movie that's in its own world in a way. Um, you could have some sort of magical powers that the players could access, where they'd have like some control over their world, and that would be really wild. It sort of reminds me actually of our dream dragon. We have a dragon in the Phaland book that when it breathes out a hallucinatory terrain that now the opponents have to
Cool.
fight the dragon in. And the only way to escape this terrain, which the dragon can also use to attack them, is to defeat the dragon. So some of those elements sort of remind me of that, what could happen in the Matrix, but there's a lot of traditional kind of heroic journey in there. Um, Battlestar Galactica. So you could
Yeah,
have
that'll work.
you're leading a fleet of ships to safety or to your home, or a convoy of wagons going across the land. And then another one from my homeland, District 9, which was there's
Yeah, that would work.
actually a trilogy made by a guy from South Africa who's moved to Canada, just like myself. They actually were supposed to make the Halo movie, but it fell through. So Peter Jackson took that money and gave it to this guy, and they worked together to do District 9. So the idea of these weird creatures arriving, and you're not sure if they're hostile or they're going to get along with the population. So I think that's an interesting idea.
In that vein, on my list, Predator.
Mm.
So you have a dangerous jungle environment. You have a creature that's invisible for the most part, but it's also much stronger than the players. Um, it would be kind of cool to have like the creature being not just a monster with teeth and fangs, but a creature that is skilled and intelligent. And I thought I wrote down. I looked this up, and I should bring this up again so I actually have a picture of it. But I always thought it would be cool to be how do you pronounce this? Yugoloth.
Oh yeah.
But I for some reason that was sort of the creature that popped into my mind of what creature would it be if the Predator was made into a D&D sort of environment. But that definitely is a cool one. I also thought of actually your District 9 just made me think of Elysium,
Oh yeah.
which was that weird society. People on the planet are suffering, and all the rich people live up on a floating island or spaceship or space station or whatever it was.
Same director. Yeah.
Um, so that kind of idea. So you have all these characters that are trying to get to that next height.
All right. I'll do a few here because we should be wrapping up fairly soon. So Alien, again, great one for suspense, and they even there's an image in the new monster manual, the 2014 one, that new one, of
Right.
a creature of a slad, because slads can lay eggs inside characters, and when the slad hatches, I believe the picture basically is the alien coming out of the creature's body. So Alien, fantastic movie, great world building. Even if you don't use it for an adventure, I love the world building in the Alien series. It's amazing. Um,
Nice.
Starship Troopers, crazy monsters. You're running around blasting them to pieces. Awesome movie. Stargate with the ideal of portals to other worlds.
Right. Right.
Maybe
Of
you like
course.
lead a team of adventurers through the portal to discover something or find something and bring it back. Um, and then 2001 for like a more philosophical sort of adventure with like deeper themes, and maybe instead of how you have a construct or a magical creature instead of the computer.
In that vein, one of the films I didn't mention it yet, the film Sunshine,
Mm,
which I'd only watched a few months ago, because I'd heard a ton of stuff about it, but it was kind of I remember looking at like the cover of the DVD and just kind of dismissing it. But I'm glad I did watch it because it would be, players being tasked to, somehow save either in the film. It's all about reigniting the sun. Sorry, spoilers. But essentially, it could be anything like trying to save a plane of existence. It could be whatever it might be,
right.
um, and basically having all these mysteries of the universe sort of coming into play where I wrote down saving the astral plane is kind of, which
Right.
I
Right.
honestly I'm not sure what I meant by that, but essentially, yeah, you just have these, again, a adventure where players have to work together to do this particular task, and but yeah, and it could
Yeah.
be not
Underrated
necessarily
movie.
just fantasy. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's underrated, I think. Sunshine, that movie for sure. My last sci-fi one is The Fifth Element. Again, you've got some qualities of humor, um, some very, very odd characters, and the idea of being in different settings in this adventure, different factions. Yeah, really strange, quirky, um, and I think actually quite well liked movie. I know a lot of people who like that movie.
That's not a bad one. I think the weirdest one I did was, which I haven't mentioned here somewhere. Where did I put it here? Uh, it's a film called Snowpiercer,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which is, I mean, if you've never seen it, I highly recommend. There's a series. There's also a film, um, and I think it's based on a comic book, or is it a novel? I can't remember. But essentially, yeah, you've got all the characters in a very cramped kind of environment where like rich people are at the front, poor people at the back, kind of idea.
Mhm.
And there's all these cultures that kind of they try to work together to survive on this train, in the film, or actual in the series, where they can't get off because the environment outside is so incredibly harsh. And but there's so many things that I wrote down here, like something where there's a progression from back to front, or maybe you're the other side and you're going from front to
Mhm.
back,
Mhm.
and clashing with other things where, and it doesn't have to be a train. It could be anything, just something that has a restricted environment. I also actually wrote down like flying, like zeppelins
An
or something to
airship.
that effect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's a fairly linear story. There's a very clear adventure to go through, and I also wrote down uh, it's the fault of some jinn. So like you had like powerful creatures that are, the genies are coming out and
Mm.
doing this to people, and it actually, and that I didn't write it down, but now that I'm thinking about the Matrix of being an adventure, that could actually be what it is. You could have like you're suddenly in a Matrix environment and you don't realize it until eventually you can escape. But
Yeah. Or Morpheus is a genie.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Like there's those kinds of connections you could make.
All right.
Um,
So let's change things up unless you have more sci-fi.
nope, keep going.
Okay. Actually, I have one more. I'm not sure if you've seen this movie, Outland.
That is the one with Sean Connery, if I remember
Yeah, he's
correctly.
like
Yeah,
a
I
he's
saw it a
a
long time ago.
cowboy
It's been a while.
sheriff,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
underrated. So he has to go into a prison to investigate some things on this like distant planet. Um, you could definitely do that with the party sent to this weird prison in the middle of nowhere, and you have to investigate it. Yeah, I think that's really good. Okay, so now we've looked at all the traditional stuff. So
Okay.
we've got fantasy, we've got adventure, which sort of blend sci-fi. And now let's look at a couple of genres that usually wouldn't fit, which is drama or even musical. I have
Okay.
two ideas for musicals actually. So first with dramas, the one actually that popped into my mind is Catch Me If You Can. Just in terms
Yeah.
of main character pretending to be all these different people, you could just in terms of having a story again where the party has to blend into the environment and take on different personas and maybe different occupations, maybe like I said before, pretending to be merchants, pretending to be warriors, pretending to be different people. I think that that part in games in the different campaigns can be quite fun.
Right. Well, and that's a drama film. So let me think of one. You could do something like no, that's sci-fi. Come on, brain.
Do you want to do me?
Um,
Let me do a couple more while you think.
yeah, yeah. Give it a couple more. I'm trying. I'll think of a couple here.
Sure. So The Godfather, again, I always remember that Scorsese says really it's about family. So you could do something like that as far as a campaign. It might maybe all the characters actually are related, and they're part of some big family, powerful family in a kingdom. And then there's all these relationships that happen as well as all the regular adventuring, and you have rival
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
factions, rival families that are enemies of your family. People try to get out of the family, out of the faction, and that becomes very difficult. Another one, To Catch a Thief, a very old movie, another Hitchcock movie like
Right.
North by Northwest, where in this one, a cat burglar is being robbing people all over this resort. In this case, it's in Cannes, I believe. Yeah, pretty sure it's in Cannes or Nice, somewhere around there. And so you could have a cat burglar loose in the city, robbing all these nobles and the royalty, and the party have to go and figure out who this person is.
The one that occurs to me, which is what I mentioned the other day to you, was the film Stand by Me.
Yeah,
But it also just popped into my head just now that you could easily do um, Shawshank Redemption.
yeah.
You could do the Green Mile. That would be a little more difficult, but but there are elements in there of all of these where uh, there's this characters that are struggling against sort of oppressive sort of stuff, and Stand by Me is about as a very clear cut kind of adventure of let's go do this thing just to check this out, and they do, and they run into different troubles on the way. Um, yeah, that would be. Yeah, there's all these films are popping in my mind now. I'm like, yeah, that would totally work as an adventure. Why have these not been written up as adventures? Like this kind of.
All right. The last genre we're going to look at is musicals because I can think of actually two. One,
Okay.
um, I mentioned to you the other day as well, is Grease, in terms
Yeah.
of especially a story about a knight and a maiden. And again, there's ways you could do this to involve the whole party, but you could have some kind of big celebration or contest in the kingdom where knights have to joust against each other. So instead of the racing, the car racing that happens in Greece, you could have knights in a jousting contest to see who's going to be the winner. And again, you could have this romance between the knight and the maiden. Maybe the party are there to protect them from another faction. Maybe they're there at this big fair a contest to protect this knight and maiden, so they can, so he can be in the contest. And so, yeah, there's lots of things you could do with that. Another one is Wizard of Oz. So here you have the straight quest to get somewhere. You literally have a wizard. You could make them a real wizard this time. You have the witch and the flying monkeys. You've got your oddball sidekicks. And you've got the Fey element with the munchkins and again the flying monkeys. And yeah, I think both of those, there's ways that you could use elements of them, especially from Wizard of Oz. Even the idea that the tornado brings her to another world and then brings her back home. You could have that in a D&D campaign.
I actually ran a D&D campaign where the Wizard of Oz was the sort of the end piece to it, because I, for some reason, fell down the rabbit hole of I've never actually read all of the the books, because the Wizard of Oz is just one book of, I think, 22 books or something. So there's all of this other lore of the kingdoms outside of where the Emerald City is, because the Emerald City and that sort of stuff's right sort of in the middle of that universe. And there's evil trolls and evil hobbit-like creatures and stuff. And I always thought that was a really cool sort of overall adventure to kind of flesh out that kind of stuff. And so I ran it where they were in a kingdom that I cannot remember the name of anymore, but they had to make their way. And it was if you've read these books, this is the one where whatever the culture was called, but they were tunneling under a desert to get to the Emerald City, and that was that's kind of where the adventure kind of started. But back to because that definitely wouldn't have been a musical, but another musical to me would be like Into the Woods, which is the fantasy world. There's a forest and there's queens and all that kind of stuff, like enchanted creatures, and it's basically Feyland. Actually, if you really think about it, it's basically Feyland.
Yeah, that's a pretty comprehensive list, which I'd be happy to put below. A lot of different ideas. I get different inspiration from lots of things, including movies. There's so many different ideas for characters and creatures and settings, plots.
Well, exactly, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about the stories and the tropes that you and I talk about quite often, where you have all these archetypes that you really subconsciously recognize, even though you don't know. It's like, I got to put my finger on that, because you could think of I'm sure that there's an adventure somewhere that you could create based on West Side Story, where if you know anything about West Side Story, you know where the source material for that was from, and basically you have all these ideas that have been done over and over and over and over again in different ways. And I just think the next step is pick a film or a book you like, and just kind of dig into it in a way. It's like, okay, well, if I boil this story down, like I'll pick on a musical, Cats. So the story of Cats, I don't really remember because I've never seen it, because I would never want to. But essentially, you've got these characters that are in this world. You have the heroes, you have the villains, you have the environment that you can look at and go, oh, the environment they exist in is, I don't know, is it like New York or something where Cats takes place? But anyway, you have all these elements you can actually look at and pull the ones out that are very much in the archetype realm, where it's like, okay, well, there's an evil layer, there's a this, there's a that. So you've got all these things you could then play with and mix them together to kind of make a different type of adventure, which I think is absolutely brilliant. I mean, why not? Take any films from your childhood. Like I'm sure. What is a film that you, growing up, watched that you once in a while go, I'm gonna watch that again, just because, even though it's a kid's film or whatever.
Oh, lots of things. Well, definitely, I'm really enjoying watching the original Star Wars movies with my kid again. The first
Yeah.
three. Actually, we did watch. Now they think about it, we watched the prequels as well. But I really like episode um, 4 to 6, especially the first one, because I remember what an impact that had. I don't think I ever really got over that. You see the giant spaceship float over the screen, and the sound effects were so good. Um, so yeah, there's a bunch of them, and now, and I think when you're a parent, you have a new excuse of why to go back to those movies for sure. But yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
I
yeah, and I
I
love
kind
it.
of I'm actually making a note here of Star Wars films, of what things to watch, uh, because I was just thinking about you watching them with your kid. What is the first film to watch if you wanted to watch everything in sort of chronological
Right,
order, right?
right. Yeah, I
Yeah,
actually asked her that because I said originally they go 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and
yeah.
she being a type A person like her mom, she said, "Oh, I have to watch it in order." But you know what? That was a mistake. I wouldn't have done that. When we did do it, I was like, because then you find things out that foreshadow things that are coming. So
Yeah.
it's better to watch the way I think that they were made, even though it's not the order. I like it. I like that better. Yeah. Um,
Well, it's like Tarantino. Any film that he's created, usually has that sort of broken up timeline where
mhm,
you're introduced to characters, but they're in the future, and you're introduced to the characters that haven't got to that point yet,
mhm.
and it creates a very nice narrative because I think, um, yeah, watching 1 through 9 with like, Rogue One and
Solo.
Solo mixed in there, I don't think you would the impact of learning about Vader is not,
No,
spoilers, is not, as good because
no.
so I think ultimately that those films, if they were an adventure, you'd probably play, episodes, 4, 5, 6, and then go back to 1, and go forward because it's just, to me, that's really world building, when it really comes down to it. Like, yes, you're learning how the trilogy you just watched, how did people get to this point? Well, this is where it started, and that kind of stuff. So anyway, but where would the TV shows fit? Like,
Oh,
I
that's a
guess,
whole other
and
show.
I know that's a whole other episode. But anyway, I predict this is going to be our top episode for a long time because, it's all about playing at the table, but ultimately there's inspiration to be found anywhere: books, movies, TV shows, and
Every
I
day.
think we've pointed that out. I mean, I think the Alien one is brilliant. I think that one, or sorry, not Alien, The Thing. You and I
Mm.
had that on a list. That was my number one on the list, and I'm just
Oh
like,
wow.
wow. So this is kind of going to be. I expect maybe there's some creativity that could be done over the holidays, over the next couple of weeks. Maybe I'll start creating an adventure based on, some film.
Hmm.
That would be
I
kind of
like that
cool.
idea.
But anyway, thank you everyone for watching, listening. We hope you have a great holiday season because, I think for the next 2, 3 weeks I'm going to be eggnogging or oat nogging in your case, candy caning, and a lot of, Baileys, I think, and sleeping, cuddling with pugs.
Sounds good. Sounds
All right,
good.
everyone. All the stuff that we've talked about will be down below in the description. And of course, I hope you will subscribe and all of that junk because that book behind Andrew there, The World of Mir, is, hitting the shelves, and, makes a great, what is it, time of year again?
It's a great Christmas or holiday gift, Shane.
Excellent. And of course, if you want to, pick up anything, from Kwood Publishing, you of course can go to the World of Mir. That's worldofmyrr.com. And you'll get the best pricing on that website. So, there you go.
True. That's true.
All right. We'll see you all in 2025. Bye, everybody.
Later.